feel like I'm repeating myself that all these classes come with so many information, but yeah. What's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel. You already know I'm Clauton Kum, and I'm now going to be a second year Podiatry Medical Student here at Temple University School of Podiatric Medicine. I just finished my first year, and I'm going to share with you in this video some of the resources that helped me be a successful first year student. So stay tuned and let's go. Alright, so before I proceed with the rest of the video, I'm just going to get these out of the way. And I also just want to say that, you know, these advice are what worked best for me, and you need, with everything, you need to figure out what is your learning style, and then, you know, how much time you have to be able to dedicate to the different things, and then figure out a schedule that will work best for you, along with all the other activities that you may have going on in your life. But with all things, I will leave you with this, that with all things, if you put in the work and apply discipline and consistency, you will do just absolutely fine. The exams here in medical school are not like the MCAT that requires you to read these thick passages and then while reading that all of a sudden create understanding from it and answer the questions. They're very straightforward in the sense that if you know your content, if you study your content well enough and are able to apply it to the different conditions and diseases and you know, pathways of different things, then you definitely be able to pick out the right answer and do well on your exams. So with that being said, let's jump into the video. Alright, so some of the classes that we took the first year of Podiatry Medical School is Biochem, Physiology, Renal Phys, General Anatomy, LEA, Histology, Microbiome, Biomechanics, and of course FPP, which is going to be our Fundamentals of Podiatric Practice 1 class. So in all of these classes, I'm going to go through each of them and kind of tell you how I studied for them and what are some things that you should be familiar with or aware of while studying for them that will allow you to be successful in the classes. But there is a little bit of a general principle that can be applied to all these classes in order for you to do well, and I wrote it all down so that I wouldn't forget it. But if you really stick to the PowerPoints that your teachers give you, and you know, spend time understanding the content, and you know, make the relevant connections between the different concepts, as well as taking some time to do practice questions a couple of days before the exam to see where your weaknesses are, then this will allow you to really, like I said, get grounded in the content, and as well as work on where you might not be as strong in, and then to finally be prepared for exam day. Alright, so now let's just go through each class, and I'll kind of tell you how I studied for this class this year and how it allowed me to be a successful student. Alright. So the first class that we're going to talk about is Biochem. Whew, Biochem. So Biochem is you know, one of those classes that it's a pathway class. You know, it requires you to follow things from point A through Z. And so with this class, definitely use the PowerPoints. Use the PowerPoints because teachers take the questions from their PowerPoints. So use the PowerPoints to get understanding of the questions and content. And of course, just, you know, be able to see the big picture of things, but also know the small details that lead up to the big picture. So this is kind of how I studied for this class. I looked at overall what, you know, the big picture of the concepts that we were learning were, and then I, like I said, going from A through Z, I started off with A and then figure out how I can make my way through Z. So I just understood the pathways of different things that led up to then being able to stand back and see the whole picture of everything. So that's how I studied for Biochem. Alright, so let's move on to the next classes, and I grouped these two together, Physiology and Renal Physiology. They were separate in our school, and I grouped them together because these are very dense, complex subjects. They're very complex in the sense where it's a lot happening at once, and you know, one little thing out of order can cause major problems somewhere else. So yeah, with these classes being so dense, I highly recommend that you follow the PowerPoints, really take your time to understand the PowerPoints and what's going on. And some things that I did, if I couldn't understand certain complex topics, where I went on YouTube and just searched like an explained version of it, really short, simplified versions that really broke things down to a very simple level so that anybody can understand it. So definitely use outside resources for this class on things that you don't understand, just to take the complex subject and break it down to a little simpler and little bite-sized pieces to understand. So that really helped me a lot when I was struggling with certain parts in the physiology and renal phys. But overall, it's an enjoyable class, and like I always say, with all things, if you try to find the fun in things, then you're gonna do well in it. Alright, so the next classes that we're gonna talk about are general anatomy and lower extremity anatomy. So these two classes were once again separate in my school, with one being taken in the fall and one in the spring. And so these are also very dense classes, and a lot of students are afraid of them, but they're not so bad. It's just a lot coming to you at once, and different pieces. But once you figure out a way to really, like I said, simplify the content, then it's a really enjoyable class. I think these two classes were by far my favorite classes of the year, and I learned so much from them. And so yeah, this is how I was able to do well in these classes. So I figured out what needed maybe memorization in a certain term, and what needed more of understanding and making connections with certain things. And then so for the things that I needed to learn in terms of memorizing pretty fast, I used Anki for this. So Anki, I used it to memorize names, names of different parts and different structures and different muscles that maybe I just needed that raw memorization to be able to kick in. So I used Anki for that. And then I used labeling. So I labeled diagrams, I labeled the pictures that didn't have any labels on them. I just kind of I learned it, and then I was like, okay, let me try to label it and see if I can get them correctly. And then another thing that I did was I also traced the paths of things, like with the arteries, with the veins, with nerves. I just kind of, traced it on labeled images, and then just kind of saw what would turn into what, and then kind of remember what part of the body or what specific region it was in before it transformed. So these certain landmarks, I kind of used that to help me with that. And then also I used textbooks. So here we go. I had this anatomy review textbook that I used, which really helped me a lot as well. And I also had this atlas of the human body. So these are some of the textbooks that I used, and as you can see, I have them labeled with different parts. And so I would just go into these if I needed to gain clarity maybe on certain things that maybe weren't so clear in the PowerPoints. I would go in here and just kind of get a little deeper understanding, or maybe better pictures or images. So these two helped me a lot as well. And with our anatomy classes, you also have to be able to read the slices of, where they'll cut a muscle in a certain compartment. You have to be able to read the slices on X-ray or MRI. And so, really understanding orientation of things, and the origins and insertions of certain things will definitely help you to know about, okay, if this slice was taken here, then where would everything be within my knowledge of what I know that slice to be. So these are things that kind of really helped me do well in general anatomy as well as lower extremity anatomy. It was an enjoyable class. It was a really enjoyable class, and of course we're being trained to be surgeons, so it's good to know all this. And so I was really happy that I took this class, and by far one of the most enjoyable classes you will have working with the donors as well. Alright, so next we're going to talk about neuroanatomy. This also was a separate class for us, and neuroanatomy is also one of those very dense classes. It's all about the central nervous system, which includes the brain and spinal cord. So you learn about sensation, perception, and all of these different things. It definitely can get complicated and complex. But once again, it was also an enjoyable class at the end of the day too. But with this class, how I succeeded was just taking time to really understand the content, so studying the PowerPoints as well, and then just tracing those pathways over and over and over again, whether it's the spinal thalamic tract, you know, the different pathways that come into the brain, take sensory input into the brain from the spinal cord or from, you know, even nerve endings, and then how it gets processed by the brain and then comes back out to send the responding output. So yeah, so just keep redrawing those pathways over and over and labeling them, and then just, you know, try to get a memorization of it. And of course, using context to say, okay, if this is visual pathway, if this is like a sensory pathway for touch or for pain, you know, then what are some similarities, but what are some distinguishes, like some differences that distinguishes them from one another. And so using things like this while you're like tracing them will allow you to kind of understand the pathways and also be able to memorize them and learn them for deeper understanding as well. Alright, so next we're going to talk about histology. And so this class is another one of those very dense class, and this just because there's a lot of information that's coming to you in this class at once, you know, in a semester, and it can get a little bit overwhelming at times because there's so many pieces and so many parts and so many like minute details of so many different things. So yeah, how I was able to do well in this class was I just really spent time, you know, being structured in my studying with it. I took time to really understand the content, look over the PowerPoints, get deeper understanding, you know, learn to compartmentalize where certain things were and what's around it and what's not around it, in order to be able to, you know, isolate certain things and be able to say, okay, if I've got a question about this, I know this is not around it, so this would be like, you know, what it's more likely to be. With this class as well, I did a lot of practice questions. So practice questions were key for me in this class. Leading up to the exam, a couple of days prior to the exam, once I finished re-reviewing content again, I would just do practice questions, see where my weak points were, re-review that content again. And this app that I actually found, the Michigan Histology app, this app really helped me do a little bit more content review, and then also has questions and it tests my knowledge and everything. So I highly recommend doing this. It allows you to pick different topics within histology and then go through review content for it and do a little bit of questions. So I really like this app a lot. It helped a lot. And also I just, you know, labeled certain images, labeled certain things to kind of help me, like within the layers of the eye. I just practiced labeling that over and over to help me really understand where things were and to build my understanding and build deep understanding of the content. Alright, so the next class we're going to talk about is microbiology. This class as well comes with a lot of information at once. I feel like I'm repeating myself that all these classes come with so many information. But yeah, this is a class where you really have to be you know, organized, and you really have to categorize things. Obviously use your PowerPoints, use your class notes that were given to you by your professor, because that's where the exam questions are going to come from. So really spend time putting them together. I created these charts for each section. One went over bacteriology, one went over fungus, one went over viruses and different topics. I created these charts that sort of helped me with the name of the parasite and their location that they primarily attack, you know, the etiology, epidemiology, their virulence, like life cycle, manifestation, so how it presents in the skin, and then how to diagnose and treat it. So I created these charts, as you can see here, a lot of them, and it just kind of helped me, like I said, categorize and organize the data so that I can quickly reference them with all the information that was given to me in my slides. I just kind of put it in this organized format to help me learn it and build an understanding of it. And also sometimes, you know, creating these types of charts allow you to have a state-dependent memory, in a sense where you're able to, you know, in your mind maybe go through and say, okay, this was in my chart, it was at this particular section, and you know, I remember it doing this. So these charts were very, very helpful. Another really valuable resource that I highly recommend for microbiome is Sketchy. I found out about it a little bit into the semester, but once I started using it, it actually really made a difference in my understanding of the subjects. So what is Sketchy? Sketchy is a video platform. They also have PDF documents of everything that they go through in the video, but they tell these stories with visual images, and that allows you to have a state-dependent memory of what they're talking about in the microbiome subject. And so once I started using it, it allowed me to get a deeper understanding of the content, and it allowed me to sort of memorize the different microbiome subjects a little bit better, and it made learning a little bit more fun. So I highly recommend it, that you use it for microbiome, and I think they may also have other subjects too, but I highly recommend you use it for microbiome. Alright, we're now going to move on to the last class, which is biomechanics. I don't want to touch up on FPP, which is fundamentals of podiatric practice, only because that's going to be school dependent. I really enjoyed that class though, working with standardized patients, learning how to take history and physical, as well as some of the lower extremity exams that we will be able to perform. But yeah, on to biomechanics. So biomechanics really, like my teacher always says, is one of those classes where it feels like you're learning a new language. And this is because you're learning about the different joints, you're learning about the angles that form the joints, you learn about the motions that can occur in the different joints. So it's really, really interesting, but it may seem really complex at first. But I'm telling you, just hang on, hang in there with the teacher, and it will all make sense at the end. That's how it seemed for a lot of us in my class. So yeah, in this class, how I studied for it is I used the PowerPoints. I took my time to, dissect them, really understand them, and then correlate it with motion within my own self. So for example, we learned about the gait cycle. I will get up and I will go through the gait cycle, and then I'll be able to learn how the different muscles, whether antagonistic or synergistic, are allowing that motion to occur. So this is like a class where you really have to study and then apply it, try to find a way to apply it in the real world. But other than that, it's a very enjoyable class. Alright, so that's the end of the video. Thank you for staying with me this long. With everything as you're going through your journey in school, if you just apply discipline and consistency, and you're just really structured with your time, then you will be able to do well as well. Also, if you ever need help, there's tutoring available, so don't forget to look into that, and ask questions and communicate with your teacher, and then they'll be able to clarify some of these things for you. Once again, everybody's different, so find what works best for you, find what would work best for you, and then try it out, and don't be afraid to try different study strategies and different styles of learning. But once you find what works best for you, just stick with it, because it will allow you to continue to produce the same results. But also don't be afraid to change it up a little bit if different classes may require something different. Thanks for tuning in with me on the best study advice to succeed in your first year of Podiatry Medical School. I hope these were helpful. Leave comments below if you have any questions, and I'll be more than happy to answer them for you. But just keep going strong, keep staying positive, and just keep learning and growing. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment if you have any questions. Thank you again for tuning in and staying on this video. Clauton out.